Hi there, it's me again. I've got a little 10x8 board, this time with a grey ground colour I applied. I'm just blocking in a bit of colour. This is the scene we're using. It's from a photograph this time. And it's a view across Gwithian beach, and I was really interested in these sparkling lights and some of the reflections on the beach in the shallow water as the tide's coming in. So that's what I was trying to have a go at getting in this particular painting. And to begin with, it's just blocking in a few ideas, a few shapes in the right places. Not trying to be too careful, but just having a bit of fun as usual. This was an alla prima painting in oils, just done in one session, which is about 2 hours long. Obviously for the video I've had to edit out quite a lot, otherwise you'd all fall asleep watching me put this paint on. Obviously you can't wait for it to dry when you're doing it in one session. It's all wet into wet, but it's really good fun, and it's a good thing to do if you're waiting for bigger work to dry, or you're just a bit stuck and you just want to have a little play in an afternoon or a morning. This is the sort of thing I tend to do. Either use photographic reference, which I'm in this case, or dig out my sketchbooks and have a look through and see what I want to turn into a painting. And this is also very good practice for plein air work, which we hope to be doing again soon. Once we're out of lockdown, we can all get out again and go out and revisit these seaside locations and landscapes. And this is a method that I would tend to use when I would be painting outdoors in oils. So it's all wet into wet, and sort of using a little bit of medium with the paint, but not a lot. I tend to use the paint as it is out the tube mix, so it's reasonably thick. I wouldn't call it impasto, but it's certainly not watery, thinned down and watery. And I think for this one I just used 3 brushes. Just had the initial blocking with the filbert shaped brush, which has got fairly sort of long bristles on it, and then here I've moved to like a round. It's did start off life a bit more pointy than it is now. It's obviously working on board, it's worn out quite a lot, but it's quite good for making these marks I'm applying at the moment, as you can see. And as I work through a painting, no matter what size or what style I'm using, I tend to always work on the painting as a whole, rather than like do the sky, finish that, then move down and do the headland and the sea, finish that, and then the beach. I always constantly moving around the painting, building it up all in one go, rather than finish off certain little areas and then moving on to the next. I just find that works best for me. It keeps me interested in the painting. Otherwise I tend to get a bit bored with it. If I was, when I used to illustrate books, and after coming out of illustration, I was tended to be quite very realistic the way I was painting, and it was that's how I tended to paint. I was finishing off areas, almost putting the painting together like a jigsaw puzzle, one piece at a time, and I've sort of really gone away from that now, because I found it got a bit boring for me. So this is the way I like to work now. A lot more fun. This is a different brush. This is the third brush I started to use in this painting. This is a rigger. I don't usually use brushes this small anymore, to be honest, but I just found this in a bag of brushes, and I wanted to see how it would work for me. And I found I could actually load the paint on the brush fairly thickly and use the side of the brush to lay in these shadows of the waves, and I will return to that rigger again. There we are, and I actually quite like it. I also like to bring in the palette knife from time to time, but not really for applying too much paint. It's mainly for scraping out and scraping back, scratching into the surface, just to try and add a bit of texture to it, and obviously removing any mistakes, which usually are quite a few. So the knife does come out quite regularly to remove these mistakes. Well, I say mistakes, but just remove areas that I don't want anymore, or just want to leave traces of. There's the rigger again. Just it's quite. I found it to be quite a good brush if you want to have a very soft touch. You're working on the wet paint. You can just stroke the paint on the surface without going down too much into what you've already put on before, and I quite like it. There's normal usual colour palette that I use, which doesn't really change that much. Occasionally I'll add a new colour in and take something out. As you can see from the photograph there, I use it as a guide, but I don't follow it strictly. I'm not like copying the photograph. It's just there as a rough guide, and I tend to have it on a laptop sat down on a table to the left hand side of my easel, and that's got the image on there, so I don't tend to print out photographs anymore to use as reference. I've used my sketchbooks or my laptop with a photographic reference on there. Obviously it's an old laptop, which I'm not too worried about getting paint onto. I wouldn't want to have a nice shiny Apple Mac or something like that sat there getting covered in paint as I flick paint across the edge of the canvas and goes all over a nice expensive bit of kit. The palette I'm using, it's a similar palette to normal. Lemon yellow, cadmium yellow, alizarin crimson, cadmium red, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, and obviously I've got a titanium white, and I've got a warm white, Michael Harding warm white, which I've started using, which I quite like as well. And there's other colours in there as well. I've got a violet and like a manganese blue, raw sienna, and so I've got an ivory black which I've got on the palette, but I do delve into from time to time. But I limit the palette, and I find it's a lot easier to remix colours when you're only using a few colours. If you've got a palette of 20 colours on there, trying to find the same colour again or something similar to it is virtually impossible. So if you can limit your palette, you'll be doing yourself a big favour. And sometimes, like here, you see I'm just stroking in a bit of almost pure ultramarine blue there into those shadows of those waves, and I find that in certain areas is very effective. And back to the rigger, just stroking these areas into this shallow, where the sand is underneath the very shallow water. And this is where I'm just putting on some final highlights with it's like a white with a hint of lemon yellow mixed into it, and I find that obviously is working really well against the violet greys on the sand, obviously being complementary colours, they work against each other. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it, and please click like if you've liked it, and subscribe to the channel. That'll help me a lot. Thank you very much, and bye for now.